News to get to right now. We said the clock was ticking on a stimulus deal. Well, it has apparently been reached in Washington, D.C. Top congressional lawmakers ironing out the final wrinkles in the $900 billion package, paving the way for votes to take place as soon as tomorrow. Talks had stalled because of Republican requests that the Federal Reserve's lending power be curtailed and a series of connected pandemic relief programs be killed off. Now, if approved, the plan will extend unemployment benefits and small business assistance while sending a new round of $600 stimulus checks to Americans. That, of course, only half of what was sent out in March in the CARES Act. And also what this means is that the government will now be funded. The relief package had been tied to a budget bill. The government would shut down if a deal wasn't reached by tomorrow night at midnight, but it appears that has been taken care of. And a relief for the first time in 9 months about to head out to millions of Americans.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Mark Brown. Get more great ABC7 content by clicking the subscribe button for our YouTube channel. And download the ABC7 Los Angeles streaming app on Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, and Roku to watch on your TV.
News to get to right now. We said the clock was ticking on a stimulus deal. Well, it has apparently been reached in Washington, D.C. Top congressional lawmakers ironing out the final wrinkles in the $900 billion package, paving the way for votes to take place as soon as tomorrow. Talks had stalled because of Republican requests that the Federal Reserve's lending power be curtailed and a series of connected pandemic relief programs be killed off. Now, if approved, the plan will extend unemployment benefits and small business assistance while sending a new round of $600 stimulus checks to Americans. That, of course, only half of what was sent out in March in the CARES Act. And also what this means is that the government will now be funded. The relief package had been tied to a budget bill. The government would shut down if a deal wasn't reached by tomorrow night at midnight, but it appears that has been taken care of. And a relief for the first time in 9 months about to head out to millions of Americans.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Mark Brown. Get more great ABC7 content by clicking the subscribe button for our YouTube channel. And download the ABC7 Los Angeles streaming app on Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, and Roku to watch on your TV.
There is some light at the end of the tunnel on coronavirus relief. After months of stalled negotiations, Congress is nearing a deal that could put money in the hands of millions of Americans. The final price tag is expected to be about $900 billion. It will include enhanced federal unemployment insurance benefits and more money for the Paycheck Protection Program. The deal will also provide a new round of stimulus checks. That money had not been included in the bipartisan proposal announced earlier this week. What's not in the deal are direct aid to state and local governments or liability provisions. Those are two of the most contentious relief issues on Capitol Hill right now. Congressional leaders in the House and Senate met last night to hammer out some of the outstanding details. The majority and minority leaders of the Senate expressed confidence a solution will be reached soon.
We agreed we will not leave town until we've made law. The American people need more help. It's that simple. Further targeted relief is now months overdue.
We Democrats would have liked to go considerably further, but this won't be the last time Congress speaks on COVID relief. Right now, we must address this emergency over the short term.
It is worth noting what's happened in this country since the last and to date only round of coronavirus stimulus back in March. More than 306,000 people have died during the 9-month stretch of the pandemic. The virus has infected more than 16.8 million Americans, with many more cases likely unreported. Nearly 8 million Americans have fallen into poverty since the summer. A recent analysis showed the poverty rate jumped to 11.7% last month. For context, the federal poverty line is an income of $26,200 for a family of 4. These totals are low by historical standards, but also mark the largest single-year rise since the government began tracking poverty 60 years ago. As businesses fight to remain open during lockdowns, the economic recovery has slowed. The Commerce Department says retail spending in the U.S. dipped by 1.1% in November. That's the first drop in months, even during the typically busy holiday season. However, spending at stores is still up 7.1% when compared to last year. As for why relief did not happen sooner, it's a blame game in Washington. House Democrats passed the HEROES Act in May. The Senate didn't consider it and wouldn't take serious steps toward a new package until this moment. Additionally, talks between Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin fell through multiple times in the days leading up to the election. Despite all of that, relief is on the horizon. So let's bring in our panel, Nancy Cordes and Eugene Scott. Nancy is CBS News chief congressional correspondent. Eugene is a politics reporter for The Washington Post and the host of the Post's The Next 4 Years podcast. Welcome to you both. Nancy, we have been talking about this. It's hard to believe we're at a point where we can say there may be some promise here. One sticking point is whether there will once again be direct stimulus checks, something that senators as ideologically different as Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley agree on. What will checks look like in this deal, and how did they end up being negotiated into this agreement?
Right. So we're still waiting to find out exactly how large those stimulus checks are going to be and who's going to get them. But a Republican John Thune, a member of GOP leadership, told reporters today it's probably going to be something on the order of $600 or $700 for most Americans, and so families would get more than that. That is a major development, Elaine. It looked like that provision was all but dead for months, but here's what happened. Once the leaders had decided once and for all that they were not going to be adding state and local funding to this bill, it was just too controversial, really opposed by a lot of Republicans, they had a pot of about $150 billion to play with. And so into that void came these stimulus checks, which, as you pointed out, have been growing in popularity. You've got people from the right and the left who have been pushing for them. They didn't do, it doesn't look like they're going to do the full $1,200 we saw last time around. That would cost about $350 billion. They don't have that much money to play with, but it looks like they're going to settle on this smaller figure, $600 or $700, which is really good news, because I can't tell you how many people we have spoken to who are struggling. Maybe they didn't lose their jobs. Maybe they aren't on unemployment, but their hours have been cut back, or they have a family member who's lost a job. They're bringing in less income and they need help. And this is something that will be, frankly, a pretty nice stocking stuffer as long as everything goes according to plan.
All right, so Nancy, let's talk timing. You spoke extensively with Senator Joe Manchin. The West Virginia Democrat was a lead negotiator for this latest bipartisan deal. What did he tell you about timing?
Well, he says that if the Senate wants to be able to vote this into law by the end of the week, which is the fervent wish, because lawmakers really want to get out of here, had hope for the holidays, then really the leaders need to be releasing bill text and an agreement today. It is late in the day at this point. We still haven't seen that bill. We know that aides for Speaker Pelosi and Leader McConnell are working feverishly, sending proposals back and forth. As you can imagine, with a bill of this size, $900 billion, there are a lot of I's to be dotted, a lot of T's to be crossed, a lot of different pots of money that they're working with here as they try to help, not just, with unemployment and with these big stimulus checks, but things like food assistance and rental assistance and help for schools and small businesses and vaccine distribution. So, you take a little bit of money from here, you put a little bit of money in there, and then you've got to write that all up into bill text. So they're working very hard to get that done. Let's see if they will get it done in time to hold a vote this week, or if, as Leader McConnell has warned some of his senators already, things bleed into the weekend.
And Eugene, is there any sense the White House won't cooperate on the new stimulus deal, especially since President Trump criticized Mitch McConnell's acknowledgement of President-elect Biden's victory?
There's been no clear indication yet that the White House would push back on this, but it hasn't come off as if it's a priority for the president, despite so many people who, even voted for him, saying that this is something that they need sooner than later. President Trump has repeatedly said that he has been trying to move forward with getting more support for those in the country who are really struggling because of the economic downturn. But his conversation and his social media activity have not indicated that this is his primary focus right now. As most of us know, he's been really paying significant attention to trying to overturn the results of the election, and it was unsuccessful in doing so. But the reality is, with a few more weeks left of his presidency, how he handles this could give him some positive headlines, something that he hasn't seen in a while. And so we could see pressure coming from White House aides towards the president to make sure that this happens as soon as possible.
Meantime, Eugene, I want to ask about Democrats. With a slimmed down majority coming in the House, some of the more progressive Democrats are speaking out against leadership. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez told The Intercept that she believes Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer need to go, but said there's no one on the left to fill the power vacuum. How do you expect this dynamic to play out in the coming year? And what will Mr. Biden's role be in making sure that the party comes together?
It's no surprise to hear someone from the progressive wing of the Democratic Party make the argument that Speaker Pelosi should step down. There's been great desire for new life and energy in this position, and obviously someone who could be more progressive than centrist at this point, because this is where the base of the party is moving. But the reality is that AOC and Pelosi have had a pretty cordial relationship, which is very different from what we're seeing in the Republican Party right now. And so I think all parties will be looking towards Biden as the leader of the Democratic Party to see who he believes would be best fit to lead the party in Congress as he takes over the country and heads to the Oval Office. It could be Speaker Pelosi, but many people are believing that it likely will not be. And it also likely will not be someone as progressive as perhaps AOC wants, but we won't know for sure until we see.
Nancy, the president-elect's inaugural committee is urging people not to travel to Washington for his swearing in. What are you hearing from lawmakers about what January 20th will actually look like?
Elaine, we're told it's going to look a lot less like the inaugurations that you're used to seeing, where there are thousands upon thousands of people on the Mall watching the new president get sworn in, and that it will look more similar in some ways to the sort of crowd you see at a State of the Union address, being specific, lawmakers and cabinet members and members of the president-elect's family, perhaps the vice president-elect's family, some other dignitaries, but that's about it. You know, they're really trying to keep things as small as possible this year. They need to social distance all of the guests out on the west front of the Capitol, which means you just can't have as many people there, and they have to find ways to discourage people who live in Washington or who might want to visit Washington from coming down to the National Mall to take a look, because they're worried that that would spark a super spreader event in and of itself. So they're looking for ways to sort of capture the spirit of the moment through video tributes and pre-produced elements, sort of in the vein of what you saw during the Democratic National Convention, when all of it was virtual, and they had a lot of videos that were prepared ahead of time. So, you know, yes, you will still see the president-elect being sworn in on the west front of the Capitol at 12:01 p.m. on January 20th. You will still see him surrounded by family and congressional leaders, but it'll be sort of a stripped-down ceremony, and it'll be a lot more low-key than certainly some of the more recent inaugurations that we've seen in the past, and probably no inaugural balls either.
Yeah, Nancy, I'm curious, is there going to be a parade? Do we know?
They haven't, you know, the Presidential Inaugural Committee has said that they are reimagining the notion of a inaugural parade from the Capitol to the White House. We don't know exactly what that reimagination looks like yet. It's pretty clear, you know, you're not going to be flying in high school bands from around the country, nothing like that, just because the logistics and the safety is just too difficult to overcome. So there will be some kind of procession, I imagine, but what exactly that's going to look like still hasn't been shared by the president-elect and his inaugural committee.
All right, we await those details. Eugene, before we go, I want to ask about your recent analysis regarding violence in the nation's capital and the Proud Boys. As you write, President Trump and Republicans had condemned anti-racism protesters this summer as dangerous threats, but the president remains silent when those who support him turn violent. That includes this weekend at a bar known to be a meeting place for the group where at least 4 stabbings were reported. What do you see as the long-term ramifications of the president's failure to speak out against white nationalists who turn violent?
Well, it'll just be another part of his legacy that he probably is not very fond of, but that people on the outside of Trumpism and even some closer to him will argue that he helped set himself. The reality is that these gatherings were violent this past weekend, just like the pro-Trump rally in November. There was violence there as well. And we know because the president continues to dispute the election that other gatherings could occur in January and even further months. And the activities that we saw this past weekend are likely to be normal and normalized if a president hasn't spoken out with them. And in fact, has said things that some of the individuals may deem to be supportive, such as his comment during the presidential debate when he told the Proud Boys to stand by. And so this violence, this inability to accept the results of the election, and this sense of somewhat approval, at least coming from the White House and GOP lawmakers based on their silence, is something that will go down in history in the final days of the Trump presidency as something that perhaps he was fond of, or at least did not have a huge problem with.
All right, Nancy Cortez and Eugene Scott, thanks to you both.
You're welcome, Elaine.